Welcome to the Subjects on Salaries class by the Grumpy Old Vet. This is class number 11 in this series. This motion posed to the Constitutional Convention by Benjamin Franklin is timeless and is a stark look at the natural nature of man. Franklin, in his 80s, was the oldest, and in my opinion, the wisest delegate present in the Assembly. His motion was in opposition to Hamilton's argument that the salary to the executive should be large to attract the brightest and the best. Franklin didn't agree. Franklin felt that honor was more important, and that alone would be enticement enough to get the men of proper motive to lead the country. With that, let's move out. Welcome to the Subject of Salaries class, brought to you by the Hillsdale Justice Project at Liberty Hall, narrated by John Rutan. The Constitutional Convention, in Committee of Whole. Speech in the Convention on the Subject of Salaries. Saturday, June 2nd, 1787. Sir, it is with reluctance that I rise to express a disapprobation of any one article of the plan for which we are so much obliged to the honorable gentleman who laid it before us. From its first reading I have borne a good will to it, and in general wished it success. In this particular of salaries to the executive branch, I happen to differ, and as my opinion may appear new and chimerical, it is only from a persuasion that it is right, and from a sense of duty that I hazard it. The committee will judge of my reasons when they have heard them, and their judgment may possibly change mine. I think I see inconveniences in the appointment of salaries. I see none in refusing them, but on the contrary, great advantages. I reluctantly disagree with part of the plan, specifically the salaries for the executive branch. While I generally support the plan, I believe refusing salaries would have significant advantages, and am willing to share my reasoning, hoping the committee will reconsider. Sir, there are two passions which have a powerful influence on the affairs of men. These are ambition and avarice, the love of power and the love of money. Separately, each of these has great force in prompting men to action, but when united in view of the same object, they have in many minds the most violent effects. Place before the eyes of such men a post of honor that shall be at the same time a place of profit, and they will move heaven and earth to obtain it. The vast number of such places it is that renders the British government so tempestuous. The struggles for them are the true sources of all those factions which are perpetually dividing the nation, distracting its councils, hurrying sometimes into fruitless and mischievous wars, and often compelling a submission to dishonorable terms of peace. And of what kind are the men that will strive for this profitable preeminence, through all the bustle of cabal, the heat of contention, the infinite mutual abuse of parties, tearing to pieces the best of characters? It will not be the wise and moderate, the lovers of peace and good order, the men fittest for the trust. It will be the bold and the violent, the men of strong passions and indefatigable activity in their selfish pursuits. These will thrust themselves into your government and be your rulers, and these too will be mistaken in the expected happiness of their situation, for their vanquished competitors of the same spirit and from the same motives will perpetually be endeavoring to distress their administration, thwart their measures, and render them odious to the people. Ambition and greed drive people to seek power and wealth. When both are combined, they lead to fierce competition for positions of honor and profit. This creates factions, distracts governments, and causes wars or bad peace deals. The people who seek these positions are often not the wise or moderate, but the bold and selfish, who end up facing constant opposition, making their rule difficult and unhappy. Besides these evils, sir, though we may set out in the beginning with moderate salaries, we shall find that such will not be of long continuance. Reasons will never be wanting for proposed augmentations, and there will always be a party for giving more to the rulers, that the rulers may be able in return to give more to them. Hence, as all history informs us, there has been in every state and kingdom a constant kind of warfare between the governing and governed, the one striving to obtain more for its support, and the other to pay less. And this has alone occasioned great convulsions, actual civil wars, ending either in dethroning of the princes or enslaving of the people. Generally, indeed, The ruling power carries its point. The revenues of princes constantly increasing, and we see that they are never satisfied, but always in want of more. The more the people are discontented with the oppression of taxes, the greater need the prince has of money to distribute among his partisans and pay the troops that are to suppress all resistance, and enable him to plunder at pleasure. There is scarce a king in 100 who would not, if he could, follow the example of Pharaoh, get first all the people's money, then all their lands, and then make them and their children servants forever. Even if we start with moderate salaries, there will always be demands for increases, leading to a constant struggle between rulers and the people. Historically, this has caused civil wars, with rulers often gaining more power, taxing more, and using their control to suppress resistance. Rulers are rarely satisfied, always seeking more money and control over the people. It will be said that we don't propose to establish kings. I know it. But there is a natural inclination in mankind to kingly government. It sometimes relieves them from aristocratic domination. They had rather have one tyrant than 500. It gives more of the appearance of equality among citizens, and that they like. I am apprehensive, therefore, perhaps too apprehensive, that the government of these states may in future times end in a monarchy. But this catastrophe, I think, may be long delayed, if in our proposed system we do not sow the seeds of contention, faction, and tumult by making our posts of honor places of profit. If we do, I fear that though we do employ at first a number, and not a single person, the number will in time be set aside. It will only nourish the fetus of a king, as the honorable gentleman from Virginia very aptly expressed it, and a king will the sooner be set over us. People may not want kings, but there's a natural tendency for people to prefer one ruler over many, as it appears more equal. I'm concerned that if we make government positions profitable, it could lead to factions and eventually a monarchy. Though we start with many leaders, it may set the stage for a king. It may be imagined by some that this is an utopian idea, and that we can never find men to serve us in the executive department without paying them well for their services. I conceive this to be a mistake. Some existing facts present themselves to me, which incline me to a contrary opinion. The High Sheriff of a county in England is an honorable office, but it is not a profitable one. It is rather expensive, and therefore not sought for. But yet, it is executed, and well executed, and usually by some of the principal gentlemen of the county. In France, the office of councillor or member of their judiciary parliaments is more honorable. It is therefore purchased at a high price. There are indeed fees on the law proceedings, which are divided among them, but these fees do not amount to more than 3% on the sum paid for the place. Therefore, as legal interest is there at 5%, they in fact pay 2% for being allowed to do the judiciary business of the nation, which is at the same time entirely exempt from the burden of paying them any salaries for their services. I do not, however, mean to recommend this as an eligible mode for our judiciary department. I only bring the instance to show that the pleasure of doing good and serving their country, and the respect such conduct entitles them to, are sufficient motives with some minds to give up a great portion of their time to the public without the mean inducement of pecuniary satisfaction. Some think we can't find people to serve in government without paying them well, but I disagree. Examples from England and France show that people can hold important offices without high pay, driven by honor and the desire to serve their country, not financial gain. Another instance is that of a respectable society who have made the experiment and practiced it with success more than 100 years. I mean the Quakers. It is an established rule with them that they are not to go to law, but in their controversies they must apply to their monthly, quarterly, and yearly meetings. Committees of these sit with patience to hear the parties and spend much time in composing their differences. In doing this, they are supported by a sense of duty and the respect paid to usefulness. It is honorable to be so employed, but it was never made profitable by salaries, fees, or perquisites. And indeed, in all cases of public service, the less the profit, the greater the honor. The Quakers have successfully practiced resolving disputes without legal action for over 100 years. They handle matters through meetings and committees, driven by duty and respect, not financial gain. Public service is more honorable when it's less profit-driven. To bring the matter nearer home, have we not seen the great and most important of our offices, that of general of our armies, executed for 8 years together without the smallest salary, by a patriot whom I will not now offend by any other praise? And this through fatigues and distresses in common with the other brave men, his military friends and companions, and the constant anxieties peculiar to his station. And shall we doubt finding 3 or 4 men in all the United States, with public spirit enough to bear sitting in peaceful council for perhaps an equal term, merely to preside over our civil concerns, and see that our laws are duly executed? Sir, I have a better opinion of our country. I think we shall never be without a sufficient number of wise and good men to undertake and execute well and faithfully the office in question. The position of general was served for 8 years without pay by a dedicated patriot. If such service is possible, we should not doubt that there are enough good people in the U.S. to take on civil leadership without needing large salaries. Sir, the saving of the salaries that may at first be proposed is not an object with me. The subsequent mischiefs of proposing them are what I apprehend, and therefore it is that I move the amendment. If it is not seconded or accepted, I must be contented with the satisfaction of having delivered my opinion frankly and done my duty. Dr. Benjamin Franklin, Constitutional Convention, June 2, 1787. I am more concerned about the negative consequences of proposing salaries than the initial savings, and I move for an amendment. If it's not accepted, I'm content having expressed my opinion. Dr. Benjamin Franklin, Constitutional Convention, June 2, 1787. Summary. In his June 2, 1787, speech at the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin expressed concerns about offering salaries to public officials. He believed that such salaries could lead to corruption, division, and a focus on self-interest rather than public service. He argued that positions of power should be filled by individuals motivated by civic duty, not by financial gain. Franklin emphasized that the long-term harm of establishing salaries could outweigh any immediate savings. He urged delegates to prioritize the integrity of the new government over personal enrichment. That concludes the 11th class in this series on the subject of salaries. I hope you found this information to be helpful and entertaining. I will see you in Class 12, where we will go over Federalist Paper 1, written by Alexander Hamilton, published on Saturday, October 27, 1787. Fall out!